Hello, everyone, and welcome to Blabbit. It's so great to have you spending some time with us here today. Blabbit is a weekly podcast where we have wonderful guest experts who specialize in sales, personal branding, leadership, and communication come on and share their insights. And speaking of communication, Blabbit is sponsored by Open Doors, your employee engagement platform. For those of you tuning in for the first time, my name is Paul Geiger. I am a public speaking coach and presentation expert out of New York City. I am tasked very often with helping individuals and organizations become much clearer with their messaging. Also, get over some of the nervousness that goes into getting up and speaking in front of people. That can hold people back in terms of being really good communicators and really good collaborators. Hello, Glenn. How are you today, sir?
I'm doing well, Paul. Thanks for asking. Hi, everyone, and welcome. My name is Glenn Ingram. I've been working for the better part of the last 2 decades, improving sales skills and sales abilities, and helping other people become better communicators and better influencers to increase their sales acumen. Good morning. Welcome, Jill. How are you?
Morning.
Tell us a little bit about yourself, if you would.
So I'm Jill Slupe, and I'm the founder of the sales agency, Verity Martin, and we work with businesses on their sales process, and in some cases, some sales training with teams, but we really specialize with companies by identifying their sales process to grow sales.
All right. Now, as Glenn is famous for saying, sales is a dirty 4-letter word. Or one of them. But a lot of people have impressions about sales, and there's a lot that goes into it. There really is. And we all know that it can be a bottleneck. It can be an obstacle at times for business. Obviously, it hinders growth. In your experience, Jill, what is one of the biggest limiting beliefs that people have about sales that gets in the way? What would you say?
Well, I think a whole lot of people who are not in sales think sales are easy, and I don't think sales are easy. And there's a lot of different methods for sales. I mean, think about, you buy things online, you might buy things with consignment or with retail or direct sales or telemarketing. So there's a lot of variety. So really understanding how the customer wants to buy, and then aligning your sales process with that method and maximizing it and making it really easy for people to buy.
Well, it is a matter of gaining people's interest first. I mean, how much sort of pre-sale energy has to go into that process, even before what would be considered the sales call?
Sure. And I think that comes back down to your marketing and really in regards to what you are selling. I work with all kinds of different customers. And so I have a dental office that I work with. And, for them, it's really about making sure that when people are actually looking for a dentist, they're available. Most people actually get a referral. So marketing to your current customers to say, hey, if anyone does ever ask for a dental office, hey, will you please suggest us and give us a positive referral. So it kind of goes back, that pre aspect again is thinking about if you're the owner of the business or managing a sales team, what are they actually even looking for? What information do they need to make that decision? How will they find you? And how will they, even get started?
Mm-hmm. Well, I have 15 questions lined up now, Paul, so just sit back for a second. So from one of the things that you just brought up there, one thing that drives me crazy, dental office, let's say, they spend the least typically on the person answering the phone that controls their revenue the most. So what do you do? How do you help them understand that that's the most important position they have there? And how do you train them so that they do listen to their customers, listen to their potential patients, and provide them some type of maybe sales, things like that?
I guess, first of all, just making sure you answer the phone on the very first ring. You have a very, positive and happy sounding voice. You actually, enlist some listening skills to really identify what is the person after. I mean, if they're calling about a billing question, potentially handing that off, to the accounts payable or the accounts receivable person. And really, listening, identifying, what do you need? Are you calling for an appointment? Do you have an emergency? Do you just have a dental question? Do you want it to, is it a salesperson wanting to talk to the doctor? It comes down to, and in a dental office, that first impression, it is that front desk individual.
So does everything come down to what at times I consider to be a dirty 4-letter word, which is data, and how often we don't want to pay attention to what the data is that will lead us to the systems you're talking about, Jill, these systems, these SOPs that are utilized in sales? Data has a lot to do with it.
I think data is one of the largest drivers, and that's really understanding your industry, understanding, your exact target market. And there's a lot of data you can buy, and there's data even within your organization that you can, review to make better decisions.
Let's talk about that a little bit more, because I don't think sometimes people understand that you can use data to be more personal. So let's say, Paul's calling in for an appointment, and say, Paul, you can pull up Paul's past history, past appointments. Paul, I noticed that we're having an issue with ABC or whatever. How's that going for you? Those little things that are associated with data can go a long way to Paul feeling more important, Paul feeling more appreciated. So how often are you seeing businesses that really aren't taking advantage of CRMs, let's call them, because they make them too complicated for the average person to use? And they're missing out on so many dollars of expanded business within customers because they're not using something like that to keep growing that client.
I think, by industry, I think there is a lot of really great tools out there that have a component of CRM. I'll be honest, I'll use the dental office for another example. When you call in, we have software set up so that it links right through digitally through the system, so that person's profile, if we have that phone number in the system, their profile does, pull up. And I'll be honest, most of the time, if you're calling a dental office, it's to schedule an appointment or to do some sort of follow-up. So it's not all that tricky in regards to who's actually usually calling in. But in some cases, we've just executed or implemented a text system. So we text people to say, hey, it's coming up on your next visit. Would you like to set an appointment? We send them kind of like a link where they can then go in and set up their own appointment. So in some cases, our sales process has changed. So we don't even have to talk to people. So but utilizing a CRM, I think, is really, really valuable. And if they did use that text system, right, where they're not talking to the front desk receptionist, when she sees that record, she can say, oh, by the way, we probably need to add an extra 20 minutes because I see you want to have a whitening, or you normally get a whitening session, or, they might have additional dental procedures that need to be taken care of. So I'm a huge advocate for CRMs, and a lot of times, a lot of those CRMs are industry specific in most cases.
And people, we all know the necessity of setting up that CRM, but it's a little bit more difficult than buying a new iPhone and taking it out of the box.
It's very difficult, and it's time consuming, and it's laborious, and even, implementing an upgrade, or in some cases, a new system can be very, very difficult. But really, I think starting with what do you want to accomplish with that? In this case, we wanted it to be a better customer experience so that when we answered the phone, it was, good morning, Glenn, and we knew exactly who was even calling.
Nice.
It pays to be big brother and sister.
So my comment just a moment ago was not to scare anyone away from doing that. We all know that it's an important aspect of sales because, and back me up on this, Jill, what I have heard, and though I don't always practice it, Glenn will be my witness, it's all about automation and delegation. Correct?
It can be, yeah. And for our organization, we take one more step back though and really look at the organization, and we really do some analysis and we look at that data in regards to how does the customer like to buy. I mean, we did a mini survey. For 90 days, we asked every single person that came into the dental office and said, would you like a text feature added? And we, got a lot of hands raised, and only then did we implement that, because we had concern because we were going to lose a touch with the customer. And those people that don't opt into having a text feature, we don't utilize that with them. We still mail out a postcard and hope that they call us in. And if they don't call in, then we have a regular schedule for calling that individual to make sure that they come in for their cleaning.
Well, we talked a little bit about sales process in the beginning. So I'd like to dive into that a little bit, because I enjoy telling people, what the old adage, if you plan to fail, you're really failing to plan, or if you fail to plan, you're planning to fail. If you don't have a process, if you don't have something that you're going to do, like Paul was saying, a marketing process that leads into a lead process, that leads into a sales process, you're really kind of fumbling in the wind. So what do you suggest people understand to get started in having a process to attract new business and develop new business?
So I guess, coming back to the data, right? If let's just say you're going to segment your customers. Think about your top 5 customers. And, what are they buying? How are they buying? Is it relationship based, et cetera? And really you could do it on a little piece of paper and map out, how do they actually buy? We could think about the dental office again, but almost always that sale starts with a phone call in, because, you're calling for that service. So making sure that you have that critical person on the phone available, with, a positive voice, it would be really, really valuable. But if you have no sales process, and I'll be honest, there's a lot of industries that have had big change. And now with the workforce shortages, thinking through, how can I make this more efficient without an extra body? But just, documenting, how does my best customers, how do they buy from me? And just mapping that out from the beginning to the very end. And people are often surprised by how many efficiencies they can identify just with that short exercise. And that's where you kind of get started.
Well, it's interesting for anyone who is not really focused on sales. The word avatar brings up the image of a movie. But for anybody in sales, understanding what your avatars are that can be really difficult to do. Because how often, Jill, do you run into clients that you work with, organizations that you work with that say, well, our product, our service, everybody needs it. It's good for everybody. And it's that old adage, right, Glenn? If you're selling to everybody, you're selling to nobody.
Yeah, well, I'm a big believer in segmenting your market so that you really look at what's A players, B players, C players. I just started working with a brand new client, and we did their segmentation recently, and they were shocked to identify they were working with over 100 clients that they actually lost money on. So one of our key strategies wasn't necessarily growing our top market, but was really about how do we actually transition those 100 clients that we lose money on to a different organization.
Wow.
Yeah, I think I always called that an accordion effect. A lot of times you're growing and you're bringing on business, and then you have to look and see what you're doing to be efficient. And then you grow to bring on business, and then you look to see what you're doing efficient. How often do you see businesses actually evaluate that, or just simply run blind? This is working, so why stop or why change?
Well, I'll be honest. So we've been around since 2007 working with businesses, and it's something that we look at with all of our clients on an annual basis. But I'll be honest, most, when we start working with a new client, most have never even done a segmentation.
So what's the criteria? What things do you look at to begin to segment, just so we can wrap our heads around what that process would feel like if we were under your watchful eye?
Yeah, I think a lot of times a business owner will look at revenue per client. And really, even if you just run a list of your top clients by revenue, it's telling. But taking it one step further, when we actually look at the segmentation, is sometimes you have clients that might spend a ton of money with you or, buy a lot from you, but can be incredibly high maintenance and, require a lot of your customer service time, which is an expense. So really looking at it from different components. And for us, when we look at that component, we really try to, brainstorm with the business owner, what are the key pieces, and every business has, different, best customers in regards to, what is that desired average sale size? What, are they efficient? Are they not efficient? And every sales process is a little bit different. So if it's online, right? If it's a straight online, sale, you're looking at things differently than if it's, a direct sale where you have a outbound salesperson that is actually meeting face to face with someone.
Yeah. You don't have much time when it's online to build that relationship. So you have to be more proficient. When we talk about your primary customer, I hear this thing in online called CRO, conversion rate optimization. And I hate that phrase because what I prefer more is buyer psychology. Because as you're talking to different consumers, the first thing I ask them is if they're getting phone calls, is who's calling, a male or a female, because that may customize what you're going to do to promote to that person. So can you kind of share your experiences along with buyer psychology as we're talking about that client avatar and making sure that you're customizing your marketing and your responses when they contact in based on what you can know about that client?
Yeah, again, I'm in complete agreement with you. We rolled out it's called an Advantage program at the dental office, and we're only targeting people that are 55 and older. And so very, very specific. And all the marketing materials, it's people who are 55 and older, in the marketing materials. In regards to dental decisions, women make 80% of all the buying decisions. So even if you're a man, a lot of times your spouse or your significant other is, if they're a woman, they're making that decision for you. And that's what our research shows for the one dental office. But again, marketing, to those individuals. So yeah, I love that you guys are talking about all the data.
Okay, here we go. Here's another one.
Okay.
What's your take on the rule of 7? Which I'm
I
sure
don't know what the rule of 7 is.
Just seven touches, 7 hours,
Oh,
7.
well,
It doesn't apply necessarily to dentists because that's more of a mission critical service. When like a plumber, when your pipes are burst, you need a plumber. When your teeth hurt, you need your dentist for the most part.
Yeah.
But other, more, I would say, longer sales cycles, less mission critical. That advertising rule of 7. Do you encounter that with a lot of clients as well? The need for it?
I'll be honest, I've never really used the rule of 7. We usually document the sales process, and let's just say you're a restaurant. With a restaurant, you could have a sales process of 33 steps. We have an HVAC company, which is very much like a plumbing company. Their sales process, there's only 11 steps. So the truth is, on that, we make it very, very specific in regards to each step, what has to happen on the marketing front and what has to happen on the sales front. And then, so yeah, maybe you guys could share a story on the 7. I have, it's not something that I really utilize. If anything, if we're going back to that psychological aspect piece, we utilize social proof a lot. So how can you actually influence people to make those decisions? But
well, I'll be honest. For years, I just figured it was, I would count a win if somebody wanted to get on the phone and talk to me. Which, as one of our guests said several months ago, and just hope that they fall in love with you, and that's it. And then, case closed. Doesn't always work that way. So I started implementing sending just thought you might like this information ahead of time. Nobody told me I had to do it. Nobody asked for it. But you start to send, like you said, social proof, whatever that might be. It might be videos, it might be articles, it might be testimonials. It might just be an FYI. And you can literally get quite a few of your 7 touches out of the way.
Okay.
Pretty quickly prior to that initial call. And that would be that's a great example of how I've begun to implement that and actually practice what I preach.
Okay.
Well, you're using a version of Dan Kennedy's principle that says you need to give someone 3 to 4 things before you've earned the right to ask for anything.
Right.
Yeah.
The power of reciprocity.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I was just on a live stream yesterday for a couple hours and we were talking about sales.
Okay.
So in my experience, if you have 10 people on a sales team, you're going to have 2 that are doing great, 2 that probably aren't going to be there very, very long, but you have that 6 people in the middle. And what I professed for years is if you can increase that 6 people in the middle to your average people 10%, you can achieve any goal you want to, instead of people that are always chasing superstars, because superstars quite often are paying the backside. So what's your experience with improving a whole sales team and where to get the most bang for your buck?
I'm kind of in agreement. I kind of practice kind of a different philosophy. My goal with salespeople is to remove any hurdles so that they, are in essence confined, to not being able to do sales. I'm a big believer in the hierarchy of sales, that you usually have a couple really top performers. And I'll be honest, usually they just need a little moral support. And, if they ask for a hurdle removed, move them out and to get that hurdle moved. I do believe in spending a lot of time with the middle because, again, if they, increase sales, you'll move the organization forward. So I kind of believe in all kinds of different, methods of communicating. I love to talk about, energy versus time management in regards to, staying positive and filling yourself up with energy, so to speak, so you can, make those extra calls. When I first started my career, it was always about, go make one more call, knock on one more door. And, sometimes we get, salespeople, get tired. And so for me, it's really kind of filling those people back up. And that could be anything from, doing a huddle midday to, regular trainings, one-on-ones, ride-alongs, contests. Different people are motivated by different things. And I think by having a clear understanding as to what someone is motivated by, and then fulfilling that need can be, it grows sales.
Mm-hmm. So aren't the organization's sales systems really supposed to set up a salesperson to be able to deliver on closing that sale? I mean, do they have to really do all the heavy lifting, or can it be part of an organizational structure? Like I was just saying, and Glenn was saying, giving content prior to, just kind of warming up the sale. So that's a big part of it as well.
Yeah, I see that as more of a marketing function, to tell you the truth.
Okay.
So, more than a sales function, but marketing works. And
yeah, I saw it's interesting. Sales and marketing, they're not really siloed. They're really, they've got to be cross-functional. It's interesting. I saw an interesting quote. I think it was on the platform LinkedIn just the other day, or maybe it was this morning. I don't know. The days tend to blend together. But it said, don't market without strategy, and never strategize without marketing. Which is,
I think that's a good quote.
It's a good quote because it's got to be a part of what you do. So I have another idea, and that is in working with sales teams, and this is going a little bit into my purview. How much do people have to deal with nervousness about asking people to commit because you are getting into a place of potential conflict, which would be maybe they're not as motivated as you would like them to be. You can feel the pressure of sales quota on your back. What do you experience with sales teams in that regard?
Well, I would say there's a gigantic spectrum. I worked with one gentleman who actually could set the appointment on the phone, could get in the car, could drive to the parking lot, but then could not make himself get out of the car because he had this huge fear of, first of all, what to say, and second of all, to be rejected.
Rejection. Yeah.
And so in regards to that, example, we did a ton of role playing so that there was no objection that he could not overcome. And so, practice, because I'm also a big believer that as your confidence grows, you'll feel more comfortable, taking on, the challenges of overcoming an objection. Mm-hmm. And, but I think, having scripts and, brainstorming. I love a good huddle where you bring people together and you say, gosh, so tell me about a challenge that you had today. And someone else might share how they actually, dealt with that same challenge. Or on the other hand, tell me a success story so that everybody can kind of be lifted up and share in the success of the team.
Yeah. Now, Glenn, isn't there an exercise of no leads to ... In other words, if they say no, that leads to this. And that would begin to remove that feeling of the hammer coming down when the word no, or the let me get back to you, or can you send me more information, or any of those familiar phrases. Yes.
Yeah. You would always rather have that no than a maybe or whatever. At least a no means no to this. It may not mean no forever, but it may mean no right now or no to some portion of it. So I always love a no.
See, I would rather have a no than can I call you or can we talk later? Because you can actually then get to the objection. Yes. And you don't waste time in the future, in essence, talking to that client.
Right. Or deluding yourself that that's a potential yes. Oh, I think I can count on that one. I think that's money in the bank right there. No.
Well, and as we talked about buyer psychology, we also have seller psychology. And I would like to know kind of when you're talking about, different people, getting to understand their personalities, their buying traits, because their selling traits typically will follow their buying traits. And it may be someone that's more comfortable that will do an assumptive close, saying, Paul, do you want to start with a credit card? Where some other one may say, do you have any questions? Which package would you like to have? So if you don't understand the psychology of your salesperson, you're never going to help them be more successful. What is your experience with trying to help people do different things as opposed to a one system fits all type of model?
So I'll be honest, I just recently with a university and their leadership, their business development team did a seminar, and we actually read the book, Cialdini's book, The Power of Influence. We did different chapters and we talked about different components, and it really led to some interesting discussions so that people could actually utilize different, methods to influencing people, to pull that back to their position, or even within their organization to sell people, to get someone within their own organization to do them a favor. So I think there's all kinds of tools out there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you bring up an interesting point, which is, I know we're talking about dollars and cents and sales and whatnot, but really the whole attitude of selling is really promoting either yourself or your service or your ideas. Really, in the higher vision of it, it's promoting yourself or your ideas, which is basically what a career is all about. So many of these things, we just figure we bounce from one thing to the next and just look for what is a good fit. But there are certain systems of process that we utilize even promoting ourselves that need to be implemented.
Well, and Glenn talked about those bottom salespeople, and I think a lot of times if they haven't had great training or they don't have the belief in the product, that's those people who are definitely at the bottom. because they don't have the belief that they can sell the product, because in some cases, I don't think they do believe in the product or service that they're selling.
Well, I'm famous for always saying that we are all actually in the same business, and that is the persuasion business. And in order to get anyone to be persuaded by you and what you're saying, they have to be able to trust you. And in order for them to be able to trust you, you have to be speaking in a committed way. And that goes right and leans right into what you just said, Jill, about believing in or having a belief in the product. In other words, a belief in the benefit of the product. Really, that's all it is. What are the benefits for this individual, which goes back to what Glenn said earlier? Know what the specific needs are of the person that you're speaking with. And if you can speak in a committed way about that, then they will begin to trust you. And then maybe they can be persuaded.
Agreed. Absolutely agreed.
Well, and what I've been preaching to people the last few years is stop being a salesperson, become a solutions provider. Kind of like our friend Antonio said, don't show up and throw up. Stop, get to know your client, and provide them a solution. Yeah. So how do you get people that are maybe the optimal salesperson that have been just selling for years to slow down, take a moment, listen, and become a better interviewer? Because if you can interview someone well, you can typically 9 times out of 10, they're going to give you all the information to provide them solutions.
Yeah. So one of the things that we typically do when we look at that profile and that perfect client is then to do some fact finding. So what is the key information that's actually needed for you to actually then make that recommendation or to solve that problem? And so I'm a big believer in, mapping out and testing your fact-finding questions to make sure you have all the data so that you really can solve that problem. And I believe in practicing. I love role-playing, because then you have the confidence and to actually ask the question, and then from that to deduct what that solution really looks like.
Is there any advice you can give to us and our viewers about how to take that process of fact-finding and make it seem less like an interrogation and more like a conversation?
Sure.
Is there a tip that one or two?
I think, first of all, deciding if you're going to ask open or closed-ended questions, right? I mean, if you're at the dental office, so why are you calling today? What can we help you with? People will tell you, it's not, one of the worst calls of all time is, when you have to actually qualify 5 things. So I've called recently to make an appointment to get my oil changed at the car dealer. Well, they wanted to verify my address. They wanted to verify my email. They wanted to, they saw the phone number I was calling in, and they wanted all this data to verify before they even asked me a question. And I'll be honest, I wanted to, if they had been in the room with me, they would have seen the smoke coming out of my ears, because what was more important for them was collecting my data versus actually solving my problem. So it turned what could have been a really great experience into a really bad one.
And it's that simple. It is such a simple little adjustment to the gatekeeper. Really, the gatekeeper there has a huge influence on the customer experience.
Well, and words have meanings and words have repercussions. So, as we're talking about the dentist, you can ask something direct, or you can say, Paul, how have your teeth been lately? Something simple, something less, in their face or whatnot. You're getting the same result. Well, probably a better result to get the same information.
Yeah. Yeah. And, by utilizing the word Paul, just right off the bat, Paul, great. Oh, thanks for calling. Just a positive, reinforcement right off the front. Oh, great to hear from you. What can I help you with? Or Paul, last time you were, and incorporating personal data, last time you were in, you talked about your new grandchild, how's that going, and, so again, incorporating, if you can, the personal touch. It's all data, right?
All right. Well, now, Jill, let me ask you a question. You're the company that you founded in 2006, you said?
2007. Yep.
2007. Okay. Verde Martin. What's the history behind the name?
Oh, well, I have never ever married, and I think of, sales growth as, in the word Verde means green, so growth, that whole component. And I never had kids, and my mom was always a little bit disappointed. So I thought, oh, I'll name my kid after her. And Martin was her maiden name. So it's Verde Martin.
Oh, that's a great story. Now that the title of your company is so endearing.
Well, my mom connects to it, and she no longer feels bad that I did not have children.
Ah, good.
I'm going to circle back a little bit to something that we're talking about again. When you have a single point of contact, whoever's answering the phones when potential or existing customers are calling in, and I want to talk about what I call nibbling, because I've been telling people for years the odds of someone buying a second or a third thing increase exponentially just by simply asking them about it.
I agree.
So, can you expand on that a little bit about trying to tell people how to have a conversation, how to maybe ask about A, B, or C while they're on the phone? Because again, they may purchase it if it's offered to them.
I agree. Well, and we recently added a couple extra questions at the dental office, and we did do some role playing. It was just, would you like to, it'll take an extra 10 minutes. And would you like to add a whitening service if you have any, big events coming up, like, a wedding, or you just want a nicer, whiter smile? And so there are pieces, and I'm a big believer, once you've made that appointment, you can add on the service. I'll at the car dealership, I'll be honest, I was really disappointed. I called for the oil change, and she didn't ask or even look at my record to say, gosh, do we need to work on your alignment? We haven't rotated your tires. So they did no upsell in regards to, my setting the appointment. Once I got there, I was a little prouder that they tried to upsell me a couple things. But initially, it was just to get the appointment. Sorry to keep focusing on the frustrating call, but I think sometimes when you see something that's a terrible customer experience, it really brings up red flags so you can identify a really good one.
Yeah.
Well, if I may, Paul, let's look at that. Let's dig in that a little bit more, because I disagree with that sales model completely. I would rather know going into there that I'm going to be there an hour and 15 minutes versus them telling me I'm going to be there 30 to 45 minutes and then them trying to upsell me when I'm there. Because if you talk to me proactively, you have a better chance of me purchasing these things than when I'm there and I know I need to get out the door. So if you were consulting that auto dealer, how would you explain that or convince them that, you have to look at when you're doing this stuff to get the best result out of the more clients?
Well, I think even if going back to the segmentation, right? I mean, the people that are having more services done are spending more money with your firm. Mm-hmm. So I'll bet you the data says, look, they had A, B, C, and D, services done versus just the oil change. And I'll be honest, I think a whole lot of people right now really, really value time and really clear communication in regards to their time. Mm-hmm. And, being able to say, yeah, your oil change will be 30, 35, 40 minutes is one thing. And then people will wait versus rotating a tire, doing an oil change, maybe replacing your brakes, etc. But positioning, the individual and saying, look, it looks like we probably should check your brakes while you're here. If we had to repair that would be an extra 40 minutes. It's preparing people for what to anticipate once they have that customer experience when they come in.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think maybe saying, there's some extra stuff we'd like to take a look at. Could we, when you come in, could we run you back to work? That way we have enough time. And again, you're opening the door for a larger sales ticket by doing that up front.
Agreed. Mm-hmm. At the dental office, it's a little trickier, though. We have to know when you set your appointment, if you want to have that whitening, process or not, or if you want to have a different treatment, because time in the chair is the most important aspect in regards to scheduling, profitability, and then a positive customer experience.
Mm-hmm. Is because there is not as much flexibility as let's say with a garage?
Well, yes and no. I guess
time flexibility.
It is, yeah. And there's only one chair and all that equipment around, in that dental office. And I think at an auto repair place, again, it would depend on how big it is. The one I go to is gigantic. So, but it comes back to managing my expectations as to how long should I wait?
Sure.
Well, and I think one of the things you said in the beginning was paramount. It's having the understanding and being intelligent enough to know that one size doesn't fit all. It's not a 7-step sales process for everyone out there. It's getting to know the business, getting to know their clients, and building a sales process for them, not thinking that your one overall sales process will work for everyone.
Yeah.
All right. So business development in general and the whole sales process comes down to some pretty basic moving parts. But in your experience, in your years with the company and working on sales processes, what has been the most intriguing or the most challenging process that you were asked to evolve for an organization or for an individual?
Yeah, I worked for a very large insurance company and helped develop a online application process so that it was back when the exchange was happening. So at the time we really wanted to streamline. We didn't have our salespeople were incredibly expensive, and it took a very long time to get people up and trained. So we changed the sales process and went from, instead of having a face-to-face customer experience, we went to a person buying that product completely online. And it was dramatic and it was time consuming, but I'll be honest, 18 months later, it was incredibly efficient. And we really learned a lot about the customer experience and how sometimes in an application, people will get stuck or not feel comfortable about giving specific information. And so detailing that was very, very difficult. And but rewarding at the end. Literally everyone applied for that insurance online.
So in that relationship between sales and marketing, if you diminish what happens with the sales, does that mean you have to increase what happens with marketing in order to maintain the equilibrium? In other words, you can't just, is it a yin and yang situation between sales and marketing? In other words, you've streamlined the sales process, but does that require that your marketing become a much bigger attention grabber for the organization, or maybe even a bigger spend, because now you've got to just pull the people in? It's not a one-on-one.
In that case, I would say the system of actually developing the software and executing the software and then getting customers to actually apply in that method was very, very expensive. But in regards to the customer's buying process, they really got the option to either, and in regards to that product, the bulk of those sales started online. So it was an easy transition for people to go from, doing a Google search and identifying who's actually offering the product in the market to then filling out that application, versus having to drive into, one of the insurance offices, sitting down with a person. They filled out the whole application. Now, in some cases, we had some people who were not IT savvy enough, and they would actually come in and sit down and with a representative. But our cost on that was so much higher because of the labor of that representative that really we lowered the cost by implementing the application online. And there were still errors periodically, and we still had people available so they could call in and, the sales rep could, walk them through a section or not, or if they felt uncomfortable about something. But our cost per application decreased significantly once the software was developed. So again, a different strategy, right? So and it was a better customer experience because most of the people that were applying for health insurance on the exchange, it was a decreased cost to them.
And more people, right? More people are amenable to that online experience now than they were even 5-10 years ago.
Agreed. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and that's the other thing. They've learned to do it, so they're comfortable with it.
So that kind of brings up, I think, we talk about automation and different things like this, and finding ways to get rid of these 4-letter word sales people that perform that. So what is the balance of doing marketing, doing automation, and having live people to talk to? Because in certain instances, I'm happy to jump online and do something. And certain times when I hit that call tree, I press 0 95 times until someone answers the phone.
Yeah, I think it goes back to every single business, and I think it goes back to every single sales process. And I think, but starting at the buyer and really listening to the buyer as to how they want to buy. I was at an ethics conference, and there was a lot of conversation about multi-generational buying strategies. And in some cases, there is a younger generation that doesn't ever want to talk to a person, ever. So, and if your whole sales process is about a person on the phone answering, welcome to ABC office, and that's the first, touch point, you're going to lose a big chunk of your audience, because there's a generation that will not call people. So really, yeah.
What do those whippersnappers know anyway?
Well, you know what? It's a very, very large population. I think we all need to be really aware of their buying power and to accommodate them, unfortunately.
You can imagine I'd say something like that. Being a public speaking coach, it's all about the speaking and the presentation. I think it is, but I think in order to get people to trust, but sometimes what I see is really what you're alluding to is the trade-off between that personal experience, a trade-off of that for convenience is really what they want. And there's a real push toward make it as convenient, even more convenient, and then make it more convenient after that. And then you can talk to me.
Well, and along with that, I think it's interesting to know, like you said, your client, who's going to be buying this stuff, and not fall for the latest shiny object. As example, as we're talking about the young generation, they're doing stuff online. If you're selling motorhomes and RVs, I really don't care about them, because they don't have the money to buy them yet. So it's finding your client and making sure you're having the right method to your client. So can you kind of share a little bit about things like that and helping people to understand who your client is and making sure that you are putting the best foot forward and not worrying about TikTok if you're trying to sell a motorhome?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think that's a valid point. But again, it kind of, if you're looking at your segmentation as to who you would want to have be your future buyer, really understanding that demographics, marketing to those people specifically, not only, and there's tons of data out there to buy. And there's so many nice organizations that will even share that data with you, for free. And, really then making that decision as to, how people are buying. But I think if you really just listen to your customer, there's a lot to be said as to, just asking questions, are you on TikTok? Are you on Facebook? What, are you on LinkedIn? Where do you spend your time? Where do you actually get your news? I was working with a political candidate. We were strategizing, and she went out and she's door knocking, and she literally asked 50 people, so where do you get your news? And they told her, and then that's where she invested her dollars in regards to advertising.
The old adage that we have one mouth and two ears for a reason.
Very, very true.
So, with what may have changed, like you said, with the employment people or availability right now, some of the things that people are doing more online, have you seen anything really change drastically over the last couple of years as we've kind of transitioned to more online and less person-to-person contact?
I have. And so a lot of the business owners that I'm working with are really strategizing and talking about how do we actually motivate our employees, and where should they be working? Should they be working at home? Should they be working in the office? What should they be doing? And different organizations are taking different strategies. I think a lot of the that salespeople self-training, like hearing the person next to you make some phone calls, you're losing that, and a lot of those techniques and a lot of those, you call it water cooler or hallway conversations about, gosh, how did you handle this kind of customer? I don't know that is necessarily happening. Although I have seen people jump on a Zoom and say, gosh, I'm having a problem with this, how are you managing it? So I do see it. But the employers I'm really talking to, they're really trying to figure out now what's the best way to actually get people to be productive. And what does that look like? And I'm a big believer is you take another step back and you document in regards to what expectations do you want the salespeople to actually deliver, and then have conversations about how they should be doing that. It's not easy. I think that the next 6 months are going to be really, really difficult in regards to some conversations and companies changing policies in regards to coming in or not coming in.
Well, we've really all collectively gone through this experience where the pendulum suddenly shifted very, very quickly. And how it's coming back, how quickly and how far is as unpredictable as anything that's happened in decades. So, yeah, I think we all need to take a wait and see approach.
Yeah. So I had I was having kind of a brainstorming meeting, and this one woman says, for all of you extroverts, I know that COVID has been terrible for you, but for us introverts, we have loved it. And, the idea of getting to be at home and just, getting to work when you want, how you want. And there's a lot of people who are really motivated by that. So I'm really looking forward to seeing some of the outcomes.
Are you sure it's not just a movement of pants optional?
I don't know. The person I date lives in Chicago, and he calls it his mullet, right? He has a
business on top, party down below.
Yeah. And I find it entertaining. So
actually, isn't it a moulet?
Oh, is that what it is? Oh, that's good. I might use that next time.
A moulet. Well, I'll tell you, Jill, this has been a fantastic conversation. And I know that we could continue this on and on, but we want to give everyone else a chance. So if they want to get in touch with you and talk a little bit more about their specific sales acceleration process, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Well, they can text us, they can phone us, they can email us, they can LinkedIn us, or they can just come to the website, veritymartin.com.
Simple enough. Simple enough.
Well, thank you very much. This has been a great conversation. We appreciate you joining us.
It's been great fun. Thank you.
Thanks. All right, everyone. We'll be at the same bat channels, same bat times next week. Take care, everybody.